Good afternoon, everybody. I am Ms. Shwetambari Borade. Welcome you on behalf of Shan and Kakachi Engineering College, Mumbai, India. We at SAKEC Research Cell would take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you present here today for this hybrid webinar series, Innovative and Emerging Technology in the Field of Research, in collaboration with all our partners. Today, I'm addressing you to the webinar on how can learning analytics support your teaching and learning experiences. The speaker for this webinar is Dr. Rwitajit Majumdar. Dr. Majumdar is a program-specific researcher at Kyoto University. He has graduated from BITS Pilani and then completed his PhD from Educational Technology from the IIT Bombay in 2018. He is currently a postdoctoral research at Kyoto University and involved in learning analytics research with focus on visual analytics and using students' data from their learning and physical activity context. His research projects are partially funded by Japan's JSPS funds and Kyoto University's Spirits funding. Now, before handing over to our speaker, I would like to make a note to all my attendees that if you have any queries or questions that you want to ask our speaker throughout the session, you can ask it via the Q&A chat box. Most frequently asked questions will be answered towards the end of the talk. Now, I would like to hand over to our speaker, Dr. Majumdar. So,
Thank you very much, Rwitajit, for the introduction.
thank you, sir.
Am I
So, can
audible?
you share your, yes, you're audible, sir. Can you
Yes,
share your
I will do that. Is working.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but I hope many of us have experienced this over this current period of time when we are doing online conferences and online seminars. So again, I thank Shwetambari a lot for introducing me. Sorry for the interruption in the beginning, and I'm
No
wearing the
problem.
mask.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wearing the mask because to say that I'm the same person whose face is there on the poster that was distributed. So before I start, I want to share my experience so far. So as Shwetambari introduced, I was there in IIT Bombay, and many of you might know Dr. Rekha Ramesh from your institute, uh, who is my senior in during the PhD days, and she very cordially invited me for sharing this moment with all of you who are online. And after that, after completing my PhD in IIT Bombay, I got the opportunity to work in Kyoto University. And since January of 2018, I have been here and I work in a very international group. Our lab has people from 14 different countries, and we work on using AI and using data-driven services for the purpose of enriching education and teaching learning experiences. So I will highlight some of our the research and the technology that is being developed in Kyoto. And specifically, I will talk about a teal platform which we are building, and that infrastructure is also used by teachers from India. So I will give examples of how we are collaborating with Indian instructors and researchers. And if then there is even more interest and time permits, I will also highlight a project about Goal, which is where I am combining a learner's physical and learning data together to see what kind of services can be built. And to end, I will also try to say that what kind of collaborative work we can do with each other possibly. Okay, so with that, I hope it's fine if I switch off the camera and continue.
Yes, sir. Completely okay.
Thank you. So first, I want to ask a question which I don't need an answer, but just for you to reflect on. So when did you take a data-informed decision today? I will give a moment. And maybe if you want, you can reply back on the chat in the forum. But I will go forward and give you some options. One is, did you check that there were two talks today on this forum? And did you decide to attend both or to attend either one of them by checking the time at which both of the talks were scheduled. Maybe some, right? Did any of you search or Googled the keyword learning analytics before the talk or while you saw the poster of the talk? Or did you check whether some of the participants online or any of your friends were attending? So I would also like to ask how many people are attending this talk right now. Shwetamari, if you can just give me some numbers around for that.
So currently I don't see it. I'll get the count only after the presentation overs.
Okay, so probably there are friends who have logged in together. Okay, probably some of you have already searched for some words, and probably you have also looked at some schedule of events that are there. And typically, that is also some kind of data that is collected in a teaching learning scenario. And okay, so another was like, did anybody check the lab website at Kyoto University and guess the nationalities of the members? So as I mentioned in the beginning, there are 14 different countries from where we have students as well as researchers in our lab. So what I want to highlight here is there are a lot of data which is just the count data or the kind of data which deals with an individual or the student's activity, as well as there is a lot of data which then deals with the student's performance or affective states. Okay, so we will try to look at some of these examples, and the the focus of our work here is learning analytics, which is to inform teaching learning decisions with the data that is generated in the context. Okay, so even if you're not using any online tool previously, maybe in current scenario due to all the pandemic scenario situation, many of you have very smoothly migrated to online teaching learning, but even previously there was some sense of data driven decisions that were taken. So at the end of the semester, as an instructor, you had to grade students, so you were looking at their performance data, where as a student you might have to accumulate about the amount of grades that you have acquired for graduating or maybe for applying for a specific kind of position, and that's where you looked at your own performance data. Okay, so we over here are trying to do that. What more can be done in a much more automated fashion, where the instructor and the learners can be helped by use of the data which is gathered. A snapshot answer of the whole theme of the talk is, how can learning analytics support your teaching learning experiences? We propose a process model. So we name that process model Dapper model. It has a 5-phase, which is DAPER, and I go into details of that. It first starts with data collection. So in our context, we are trying to collect data automatically from various learning systems. So possibly you are also exposed to some kind of a learning management system. In our context, it is Moodle, but there are many different learning management systems like Blackboard, Canvas, Sakai, and any of that helps as an instructor to create the course, to register the students, and then to orchestrate the whole course. Okay. Now, the second thing is Bookroll, which is one of the ebook readers, or what we call as the learning content distribution system that we are building. And along with it, when the teachers and the student interact with these systems, we automatically collect data of that interaction, and that is in research it is known as learning logs, and those log data is stored in a database, which and then there are many different ways in which we can store it, and essentially we are automatically collecting the data while there is interaction on that online forum. With that, what we do is we create various dashboard elements where we can visualize what kind of interaction is happening. So let me give an example, simple example of, now as a teacher, you uploaded a text material for the students to read for a specific subject, and then the teacher can check in each page of that material how much time did the student spend. Okay. In a similar way, if a quiz was given, then the teacher can look at which question while the students were attempting it online took most time for students to respond to. Okay. And in our context, we see like what is the reading behavior of the students, and based on that, probably we want to plan, or as an instructor, we want to decide what kind of support or what kind of intervention can be given to the students. Okay. So over there, we have various kind of technology support, which can be semi-automatic. For example, we look at how much did a student complete a specific reading assignment, and based on that, we give the teachers a list of students who did not complete and give him or her the opportunity to send an email reminder directly only to those specific students. Okay. Now, when that email reminder is, and all of this is done within the environment itself. So that is also one important factor, that the teacher or as a student, we do not need to log out of a system and again log in somewhere else to conduct something else. So we don't have to log out of the system and go to the email environment to send this email, but it's automatically done within one system. So when that is done, we want to see that we want to collect this whole process data. So what was the problem? In our case, maybe the problem was there was less engagement of the student with respect to how much they are completing the book. And then what are the indicators for it? We have probably the percentage completion of a specific book by a specific student as the indicator. And then we say that, okay, the student not completing being the problem, we might want a solution of automatically reminding them about a task deadline of completing that, and then that is done as a solution by using some of the widgets that we have built, and then we want to wait and see what was the result. So once the student receives that email, do they again come back and then log into the system and finish the reading assignment that was given by the instructor? So this whole system and this whole process, each and every phase of it, we track and keep the data of that. Okay? And that feeds in to the next cycle. So what I mean is, then what the instructor did in the first round, they go ahead and maybe next time we can predict that, okay, out of some of the students, they might not complete reading, and we might want the set of those students list directly to the instructor and ask him or her to encourage those students to complete it. Okay. So these kind of things where the instructor then can concentrate more on personalized feedback rather than finding out more manually more details about, okay, who is not completing the assignment. Probably you would relate to it more in this present context when you do not have a face-to-face interaction with the students, where you need to conduct and complete a certain portion of the syllabus, but you are not able to get feedback which is of the similar quality that you would get when you are in a face-to-face classroom. Okay, so the tools and our services try to bridge that experience of the instructor in a semi-automatic by providing semi-automatic support. Okay, so I talked about the process, and here I want to overview about what are the components of it. So as I said that there is a learning management system, LMS, or a student information system where we know what is the course, which students are enrolled in it, and with that we have different kinds of tools which are linked to a learning management system. It can be the ebook reader, it can be other say a quiz platform which is linked to that, or it can be other platforms. For example, in your course you say that do this one specific component in from another MOOC. For example, in Indian context, maybe a lot of instructors also use NPTEL content, and the NPTEL content is provided in another platform, but from an online Moodle platform you can directly redirect them to those platforms. And all of these things which collect the data, we are saying that we are considering them as the learning behavior sensors, because you can, as an instructor or as a researcher, and even for the learner, they can have a trace of how they are learning, and this gets stored in what is known as a learning record stored, or the LRS. And then we are developing a dashboard. So the dashboard essentially picks up those interaction data, it processes that data, and then gives a overview visualization for the teachers. So in the next few minutes, I will give you an example of each one of them. And with that dashboard, then we are trying to figure out that what is the evidence of improving learning. And to do that, normally what we do is, many of us who are researchers, we would try to observe a class, gather data from the class, and then do statistical analysis on that. In our approach and in our attempt, what we want to do is we want to do that also supported by technology. Once that is supported by technology, then we can go towards a practice which is more evidence based. And that's why we are saying that this is a learning evidence analytics framework that we are building, whereas most of the infrastructure which exists currently deals with the LMS, some kinds of tools which collect the data, and some kind of dashboard which visualizes the data. But we are going a step forward to see that how we can collect evidences regarding certain teaching learning practices and then improve the whole cycle of that teaching learning practices consecutively. Okay. So yeah, this is about the Moodle, and then we have a book roll, and we have a couple of graphs in the an analysis dashboard. So at this point, I will take a break. I will say that you can try to use the tools that we have built directly. So probably after this talk, you will also get the link for this presentation, and you can use to log into the system and use the system to get the experience as a teacher as well as a student. So moving forward, what we did was, I will now talk in context with what kind of collaboration we are doing with India. We trained and we had an interaction with teachers from India on two different forums. It was the Technology for Education. It's an IEEE conference held annually in India, but unfortunately this year it would be skipped. But for the last 2 years, we introduced this platform to the teachers from different, maybe around 71 colleges in India, and gave them access to create their course, utilize the tools, and go forward and see what kind of data-driven decisions they are taking. Okay. And we came up also with research outputs with that. But before I go forward, I will give you some demonstration of the tools. So that would make it more contextual. Okay, so please let me know if you can hear. Let me give an example of how to use the TEAL platform for teaching learning activities.
So I would like to interrupt here.
Yeah.
The audio is not audible.
So I'm trying to play a video from my system.
No, I just wanted to know, had you done the include system audio before sharing the screen?
Might not be.
So can you just stop sharing it one more time and then include the system audio so that everyone will be able to hear it?
Um, Now with all the data of the now with all the data of the students' interaction with the learning material being there, there is a LA view is an analytics dashboard. So with that dashboard, the teacher can sorry. Yeah. Let me give an example of how to use the TEAL platform for teaching learning activities. We start off with the learning management system, and in this example, I have selected engineering physics course, which is designed by Dr. Vijay Nandini from GitHub Hyderabad. She has added all the learning materials and learning activities that a student needs, and also there is bookroll, which has all the lecture material and the textbook that she has uploaded. For example, I can go in a specific text, and then as a student, I can highlight the specific things using a highlighter, and which can indicate whether it's a clarification I need or something which is important, or even go and create some memos. And while doing that, I can also look at the the actual text and create a handwritten memo. So there, many times the teacher has had used this to create assignments where they have said, okay, draw a specific, for example, while using free body diagram and things like that, they have very creatively used this handwritten memo function to create new types of assignments for the students. And once they're using mobile devices or any tablets, it's very easy for them to do these kind of interactions on the screen itself. So as a student, I can create various kind of annotations, and each and every time I'm doing an action of going to the next page or highlighting certain things, all of that data is recorded. Now, what can the teacher do with that data? So if we go back and see that now with all the data of the students' interaction with the learning material being there, there is a LA view is an analytics dashboard. So with that dashboard, the teacher can then look into what happened during learning. So in our specific context, we already come and the dashboard shows which course is it, and we can select a specific content which was there. So we looked at definition of a flask. I will open that, and you can also select one student in that class and do an analysis of how he or she went through the content. But if we see all and then we select a period of time, for example, I select an arbitrary longer period, and then it gives an overview of 45 students looked at that content. They, on an average, they had 36 interactions. That means they clicked on either the next or created a memo, and all of these actions creates an event. So they had 36 events while being on that content, and they read for 14 minutes on an average. And then it also gives at a glance for the teacher what are the things that were highlighted. So it gives for all the students together what things were highlighted as important or what was highlighted for clarification of a doubt. Now, further, it also gives a accumulation of the memos that were written, and the teacher can look at all the students' memo in one panel and also export that as a CSV format. So many teachers have used this to create their own small assignments within a specific reading material. And the graphs here, memo analysis, marker analysis also shows which page in the content has what is the count of markers in each page that is there. So from looking at here, probably the teacher can see that, okay, on page 1 there is a lot of yellow marker, and if the instruction was given to highlight doubts with yellow marker, then the teacher needs to go and check which area the students needs more clarification. Okay, so hope that gave you a basic overview of the reading platform that we are building. And what the teachers essentially did was they used this whole platform in their regular semester course, and then we also collaborated to find what kind of effects of using these kind of things happened in Indian engineering colleges. So the example that I gave previously was from Professor Vijayanandani's course, and she could also write a paper based on how she effectively used blended flipped classroom methods in her engineering physics course, because what she did was she could give the reading materials in the flipped part where the students could read that material back at their home or at their own pace, and then she had specific activities that were done during in-class sessions. Similarly, there was also Professor Atul Kulkarni, who had given this platform for his undergraduate engineering course, and then he looked at what was the acceptance and how did the students use this uh, platform as platform while they were doing the regular semester based activity. So why it is interesting is often research uh, is is um, is thought of as being done only in lab. So if we just develop something for a prototype versus we go ahead and actually deploy it. Whereas in the approach that we take in our lab in Kyoto University, it's building systems at scale. So we actually have the system deployed such that everybody can use it, and then we are not doing a control study in this case, but we are actually doing a so-called regular day-to-day learning based activity, where these instructors and their students are using them in their regular semester course. Okay, and that was really encouraging, and that was really helped to also find out what are the issues that are there, and it went in a manner which is in research terms it would be known as a co-design activity. The researcher, their students, and we as developers and researchers, we work all in tandem to create these services. Now, till this point of time, I was talking more about very straightforward activities that can be done. But essentially, for our research, the uh, the the part which comes, we start from after that data is collected. Okay, so for example, we wanted to look at, so we have various interesting questions that can be solved once we have certain kind of data. Okay, so for example, we looked at in this specific study was done in schools in Japan, because we are also providing this service to a public school across different grades in that school in the city of Kyoto, and we wanted to look at how the the use of a learning analytics dashboard by the students affect, and what is its relation to the grades that they get. Okay, in high in it's in junior high school, so it would be around standard 8 in Indian context. So when a student in standard 8 is studying mathematics and English in this Japanese school, and they were uploaded their reading contents and their solving examples in the bookroll platform, how did they reflect on how are they learning? Okay, so the reflection is happening while they're looking at the different graphs that we provide on the dashboard, and what is that, how is that influencing the grade. So we are doing very simple ways of looking at, is it correlated first of all. Okay, if it is correlated, then we cannot still say that it is only because of the dashboard that it is influencing, right? So next question comes, of the people who looked at it, how did they look at the specific information that was visualized. Okay, and then the current graph and the current plot that you're seeing over here shows the difference of how a maths teacher looks at a visualization graph which is presented on the dashboard versus how an English teacher looks at it. Okay, so something comes very apparent over here is the English teacher looks more at an overview statistics, whereas the maths teacher is looking more about a marker overlay activity that was given. So what I want to highlight here is, uh, because the maths teacher had given a specific kind of activity, and that's why in the behavior of actually looking at the data, it was also reflected that that specific graph was accessed more by that maths teacher. How does that help us as a developer? By knowing this information, then we do not want to have so many graphs that the maths teacher looks and try needs to decide or needs to find the graph that he wants. Now there we can directly give the graph which has the information required to analyze the student's activity directly. Okay, so this, in the term of technology, we are trying to personalize and trying to adapt to the user's behavior while knowing what is the user's previous action. And to create these kind of services, we are we are applying various kind of algorithms to find out what is the user's behavior and then to adapt towards that. Okay, so this is one of the examples of how analytics dashboard is, from being a static dashboard, we are trying to build more interactive and adaptive dashboards for the instructors. Whereas there is another example of this where we are trying to do group formation support. So what we know is there are quite a lot of activities where the teacher needs to group students and then give certain kind of activity for that group. But how is that grouping done? Okay, in the Japanese context, even in university, we have seen that to form a group, at least the teacher spends more than 30 minutes of his or her time to decide and then create that group. But then it also has other other things that needs to be done. For example, once the group is created, each of the students need to be informed about that, and once the students know about it, they have to separately give the task for the group, and then they have to evaluate the group, and then they have to tally all these numbers. So group formation is not a trivial activity, but it in literature it has seen that there is a lot of learning benefit while students learn in group. Okay, so we wanted to support that activity for the teachers, and we said that okay, we won't do a random grouping, or we won't do just grouping based on some arbitrary rules, but let's try to look at the data which is collected for those students. And then, as you can see over here, we are saying that we have different variables that we can upload or directly from the system. The teacher can select their performance score, which is also in the system. Teacher can select the way in which, or the time that the students are spending on the reading material, and select all those multiple parameters, and then say, okay, give me a group which is similar. Okay, so that is homogeneous grouping, versus say that, okay, give me a group which is heterogeneous considering these multiple parameters together. Okay, or they might upload their own some kind of a grouping, like I want to group student number 1 and 3, so they are in a group together, and then rest of them you can group in another group, or some kind of a preference. Okay, so our system is more flexible to look at different kinds of how the students can be grouped. And what we did was, as a pilot study, we got this and went into a elementary school. So it is basically till standard 5 in Indian context, and we went into a class which it was a mathematics class, and we gave this grouping algorithm, and we took the data of the students while they were doing their task before, and some of the tasks that the teachers grouped them. Okay, so we are calling it the teacher form group, and the teacher grouped them, they gave the activity, and we have some measures of how was the performance in that group activity, versus some of the other ones were informed with the data, and then the students conducted the similar kind of activity. Okay, and when we compare these two the activity of these two groups of the same students, but grouped by different, one by the teacher, another by the system, we actually see there is improvement in their engagement during the computer generated grouping. Okay, so whereas we have collected various kinds of data while they were doing the group activity, and then we also tried to look at the kind of emotions that they were having based on the they in the group activity they were actually talking to each other and trying to solve a problem, and we recorded that voice and tried to find out what kind of emotions they were having during that activity. And it so that the positive emotions of being calm, being it was calm, it was more about the energy, those actually were increasing during the group during the computer generated group scenario. Okay, but again, some of the limitations are we did not want to do a control study over here also. So we did not have, means we exposed all of the students to both the teacher formed and the computer formed group. Okay, but without going deeper into the research part of it, what I want to highlight is, given these data sources, the approaches that we are taking can also assist teachers to create groups automatically with the help of the system, and then have the interface which can directly grade those students within the group itself. Okay, so I would conclude that the first part was more about the teachers and some of the examples of how even a simple reading based data can be utilized, along with the dashboard interaction data, what all things can be done for informing the teachers, supporting the teachers, and as a learners, how to reflect on it. Okay. However, the second part of it is one of the projects which I am building currently. It is about it focuses mostly on the learners. So it's the goal project. The full form of it is goal oriented active learner. And the idea over here is that the learner is not an isolated individual, and the learner has their own day-to-day activity. And in that day-to-day activity, how can we support the learner to become more self-directed? So by self-directed, we mean that the learner can analyze their own problem, and then they can plan to overcome their problems, and then they can monitor about how they're executing their plan, and then reflect what worked for them and what did not work. Okay. So we apply the same process model, Dapper, that we had introduced in the beginning, but this time we are trying to focus on how it can be contextualized for the learner. Now, with that, there is, as I said, because it's in a day-to-day learning context, we do not want to just exclusively look at data from only the learning activities, but we also look at data from their physical activity or things that they can plan for their regular day-to-day physical activity. Okay, and then we build a system which synchronizes and synthesizes all of these different activity logs, and then see what kind of support can be given now that we have these two different kind of data in one system. Okay, so essentially what we did was we collected the ebook logs, their learning logs, their performance data, which is from the learning activity, and their daily lifestyle data of like what kind of nutrition they're having and what kind of physical activity they're doing, and that becomes the data collection phase. In the analysis phase, for example, if we can from their physical activity, from their physical activity data and from their physiological data, we can automatically calculate, suppose, their BMI, and with that we have standards to categorize, and hence we can say that okay, something is at a problematic level. Okay, so for example, BMI is a much more standardized indicator to identify health related problems, whereas we do not have that kind of standardized indicators for various learning problems that somebody might have. And there also, a data driven approach is something which can be used and which can build in rules inductively from the data. So if we have data for, say, all the undergraduate students about their learning activity and also have their performance outcome, probably we can build models which can say that given a new student, if we see how they're doing, we can predict what kind of performance they would have and help to analyze whether the status of that student is at risk or not. Okay. So based on that, the system then helps to plan, and then while they are doing the plan, the system also tracks them and can hence say that whether they are on track or off track of their plan, and then gives a lot of reflection prompts. So what I mean by reflection prompt is it gives a set of reflective questions such that the student can then reflect on how did they execute whatever they had planned for, and was it too difficult for them, was the activity too difficult for them, did they give too much effort but then they were not satisfied with the outcome that they achieved. Okay, these kind of prompts, which is more questionnaire based, was is given, and then based on that they can again go back to the next second round of that cycle. So what I'm highlighting here again is from the previous example and also from this example, it's a cyclic process, and each and every time we are using data, we are using the data first to analyze what is our status or what is the problem, or is there any issues in the teaching learning context or in our any day-to-day life context, and based on that doing the planning and monitoring and then reflecting on it to go back to the next cycle. Okay, So there is a lot of things which are also part of this project, where we are applying machine learning algorithms to personalize, as well as to to understand what kind of profiles exist for different kinds of learners based on the combination of their physical activity and learning activity data. Okay, I will skip that details due to lack of time, but essentially I will show you some of the findings that we had. That we gave this as a pilot study to various to the school in Japan, and we tried to find out what is the relationship of the stress level that they have as we collect it from a wearable device. So we had given every students in the junior high school a Garmin band, so which collects their heart rate and can also compute their level of stress from that heart rate information. And the goal system synchronizes all of this together in one database to, but when it does that, it maintains the student's anonymity, and it does that in a way in which the system is able to identify, but none of the external interfaces of that has any identification of that individual without authority. So what I mean is, if the student logs into the system, they can see their own data with their own identification over there. However, as a researcher, if I log into the system, I do not see anybody's name, anybody's identification over there. However, the system connects these two data in a pseudonymized way to make possible all these data driven services. Okay, and I would stop over here, and I'm open to take some questions, because I would rather want to see that what kind of reactions and what kind of things you want to know more about, and then go forward probably.
Okay, sir. I'll take one question here. Is there any free platform to implement this? Can we use Moodle?
Yes. So as I said that our we can use Moodle as an entry point, and we can add any of these tools that we are building through this thing which is known as LTI, as an LTI link. So what it does is, essentially you can just add any of the services that we are building as an external tool in Moodle.
Okay, sir. And the same question continues. Can I export this data in form of sheets as Excel and plot graphs, charts, etc.?
Yes. So I we totally wanted to give the authority back to the teachers, and that's why we wanted to say that the researchers the researchers essentially do this by extracting all the data, but it's a lot of hard work. We do not want the teachers to who are already very busy to do that, and hence by using the dashboard you can actually export the data. So what I will just try to give one demonstration of that. And so let me just show. So this is the Moodle where I'm logging in, and for example, if I go in one of the courses, and then I see that, okay, the instructor has uploaded some of the content in Bookroll, and then you go to the dashboard, and in the dashboard you have a data exchange part where you can download the data, and you can choose whose data you want, and maybe also choose what kind of data you want, and then download it as a CSV file, or if somebody is doing much more computation, they can also download a JSON and use the JSON format file.
Wow, that was good to know, sir. I'll take few more questions, or you want to continue first?
Sure, I'm open for the questions.
Okay, fine. So the next question is, what are the potential uses of learning analytics?
So potential users of learning analytics, I would portray it as twofold. One is to understand what happens during a learning activity. Okay, while doing that, you can then use that understanding to improve the teaching learning experience. So for example, now if we know that how a group of students who were grouped based on a certain kind of rule performs, then we can verify whether we need to continue with the same kind of rule of grouping, or we need to improve, or we need to change the decision to another type of grouping which might improve the performance on that specific learning task. Okay, so it's a lot of observation and data collection regarding a learning activity, which then is supported by the technology which exists at the current age, to then automatically or in some case semi automatically support the teacher to conduct certain kind of teaching experiences, or even the learners by giving certain kind of recommendations to the learners.
Okay, sir. Next question is, how can we make teaching and learning more effective?
So that's a very overall question. We are all trying to find out how can we make teaching and learning more
Yeah,
effective.
that's true. I agree.
So what I want to answer over here is, this is one of the approach that we are taking. So and there is still some discussions in literature about, there is the concept of precision medicine, where we are trying to see that, okay, what kind of medicine works on in certain kind of in a disease scenario. However, I do not I do not conceive that the education is a similar kind of scenario. How, but we do not want to like transfer that notion of a patient and a learner, they are similar or something like that. However, the objective of recording what was the context, what was the indicators that were measured in that context, what was the problem that were identified in that context, and what was the solution that was provided in a specific teaching learning context. And that result of it, if we can capture these 5 elements in a teaching learning context in different modalities, be it face to face, be it online, be it while doing a specific activity, be it while using specific tools, if we can gather this structured data regarding a teaching learning experience, probably we can then do analysis of this gathered data to find out what worked. Okay, so traditionally in education research, it is done as a meta-analysis, where each individual research paper conducts some intervention, they report how much it worked, what was the effectiveness, and then a meta researcher, or a researcher who is doing a meta-analysis, collects all those evidences together and then says that, okay, what was the effectiveness of this an approach of teaching or learning on students performance or on students motivation. So it's a collection of that. Traditionally also it is done individually by a researcher, but here we are trying to see what kind of technology support can be provided for the same.
Okay, sir. The next question is, what are high impact teaching strategies?
Okay, so I would redirect that to my previous organization at IIT Bombay. We were and we are still doing a lot of work about active learning and teaching strategies which would which are learner centric and would provide a lot of active learning opportunities. So if somebody is interested in what is high impact teaching strategies, then probably if you visit IITB's ET IITB, and then there is a whole set of resources which you can look over there to answer and to explore this. So there is teaching online. So they have a resource about how to move classes from classroom teaching to online teaching, and other things as various teaching resources, how to conduct various kind of activities. So these are something which are very handy for the teachers. It has been developed with research, so you can directly adopt it. That said, from our context right now, while using online tools, what we are doing is we are trying to come up with various kind of reading strategies. So some of them are highlighting based activities and things like that, but that is very specific to the type of tools and the type of technology that we are developing. Yeah, so the means maybe to summarize, the answer is high impact. It depends upon what is your context, and then there are resources available. Once you decide which context and what kind of activity you want to do, then you can probably look at what were the effective ones which exist.
Okay, sir. Now I understand. Thank you so much for answering to the attendees. And here's a small token of appreciation from Shan and Kakachi Engineering College to you. And I would really like you to accept it, sir.
Thank you very much. And I had I wish that I could see the participants, and maybe I would see the participants and greet them. However, maybe there it is not possible in the forum, but I really appreciate for all the efforts for the organizer, and I am thankful to Dr. Rekha Ramesh for introducing this, and to all the members of the Shankar research community who organizes this. To end, I would also mention about some of the because we could do all this research because there are a lot of students who are really engaging and encouraging each and every day to conduct this research. These are just a few of them who are working, whom I have the opportunity to work with. And there's a lot of funding which makes us to develop these and outreach these activities even to teachers in India. So thank you very much again.
Thank you, sir.